Oops. Fairly centered though, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. We do anything with these pillows today?
I did what I always do.
Don't think so. Are we on? Hi guys, how are you? If you could let Paul know if you can hear okay. I'm going to give this a second for a few people to tune in.
All right, they can hear us.
Okay, very good. All right, everybody, welcome. While we let a few people tune in here, I do want to invite you to check out Ivy's Healing Center 7 days a week. We have consultants, graduates from the Ivy League Psychic Academy, the highest and best in light work and from the strongest ethical code of conduct, all trained and certified through the Academy. We are offering 7 days a week readings and healings through Ivy's Healing Center. So wherever you are in the world, whenever it is, you can just call up and you don't need an appointment. So this is huge. It's been a great success so far. Yes, Paul?
Yeah, it's been awesome.
Paul designed the system and it's working beautifully. I'm very, very excited to announce that. It's been many years in the coming here. Trying to fix my hair so it's not driving me nuts the whole show. Whatever. All right. So we have that going on. We also have, as part of the free mini class series that I've been putting on, it's called the Quarantine Series. Once a week during the quarantine, been putting out a free mini class here on YouTube. We have a couple more coming up. And the next one is going to be Sunday, the 24th at 8 p.m. And it's called How to Hate People Less and Forgive More. We have another one, Dreams, Symbols, and Deja Vus, coming up on Sunday, May 31st. And then we have Feelings versus Intuition, how not to make decisions in your life. You should never be making your decisions from your emotions. And while we hear this, that's not so easy to remember. That's an easier said than done type of scenario. So we are going to be breaking down why and how you should be using your intuition, your gut instinct versus your feelings, which are fleeting. And to help you with that even more, we're bringing in Christina Del Rey, our brilliant astrologer from the Ivy League Psychic Academy, and she'll be talking about planetary shifts that go on that make you super emotional and make it a lot harder for you to, come from a place of intuition versus feelings. So that's going to be awesome. Wednesday, that's going to be June 3rd at 8 p.m. Okay. We have a few people tuned in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, jeez. I can't figure out exactly what I want to do with this. Give me 1 second.
Do you want my chewing gum?
I think, maybe. I think I need more hairpins. Puerto Rico is sprouting tonight. Okay. So, let's go ahead and get into tonight's class. So welcome everybody. I'm Ivy Rivera. I'm a psychic medium and a Taino Arawak. I started a school called Ivy League Psychic Academy about 9 years ago, where I started to train people in psychic mediumship development, and it quickly grew into what is now an online and international school where we train people in everything from mediumship to tarot to astrology to Reiki. So you name it, we do it. And death coaching, today's mini class, is part of what I use in the psychic mediumship curriculum. If you're interested in the psychic mediumship course for the fall semester, registration is now open. It is limited and it starts October 7th. Okay, so Paul will put that up in the description bar above. Now, this isn't something that I teach my students straight out of the gate. This is more toward the end of the program. And we also offer a master's class. And in master's class, we talk more about this in depth. But I am the only one that I know of who speaks of this. I don't know anyone else who uses it in their reading process. And I don't know anyone who teaches on it internationally. So what you're hearing today is probably going to sound a little bit strange, but my angle with this is that whatever spirit has shown me ever to build in the curriculum here at the Academy, it's always based on truth and simplicity, and it is helping us get back in touch with our roots. So it's innate. This isn't hard to learn. Nothing that I teach at the Academy is difficult to learn. It just requires that you remove some blocks from your old way of thinking. And so that's what I ask you to do today. It's just to be open-minded and listen to the possibilities. Now, the big reason that you may also not be hearing about this from mediums or other mediumship trainings out there is because if secrets like this were revealed, it would take money and power out of the pockets and hands of those mediums. And so there are a lot of people that are in this to make money, and this deteriorates that possibility, okay, by giving the power back to you, a lot in the same way that the church has said, you have to come to church or you have to go to a priest to get in connection with God when actually God lives inside you. It's that same kind of setup of corruption that takes the connectedness away from the individual and puts it in the hands of the hierarchy, the higher power, okay, which is an illusion entirely. So I'm more than happy to do it. This is probably going to cost me a lot though. So here we go. What is death coaching exactly? Well, death coaching is the way that we are all able to communicate with our dying and deceased loved ones. So what that means is that you can communicate with your loved ones, whether this be, a lover, this be a child, a family member, a friend, whatever it is. We do this all the time naturally while we're alive. So it is a myth, 100% myth. In all of the trainings being taught today internationally, they stick by this myth typically, which says that it takes a year to a year and a half for a deceased loved one to communicate from the other side. Here's the myth. That when someone dies, they have to go over there and get acclimated, and they have to learn how to move without their body, and then they have to let go of, baggage, and they have to then decide that they're ready to start communicating, and then they have to learn, no, none of that, okay? It is just literally none of that. First off, we are all communicating all the time with each other. While we're alive, we are all a spirit. Whether your physical body, whether your little meat suit here is living or deceased, that's irrelevant. It's just a casing. We are all spirits. So when you dream at night and you are communicating with one of your friends or, a loved one, you're having a dream together, well, that's the same thing. When you telepathically can hear someone else's thoughts, or you telepathically know that someone is about to reach out to you, the phone's going to ring, it's all the same thing. When you get a psychic warning sign, your higher mind steps in and tells you that there's something you should be mindful of that's going to happen to someone in your circle, it's all the same thing. Energy is energy. Energy is not manipulated because of the body itself. Okay, it still transfers. So first off, we have to eliminate that myth. Now, again, it's another way for all of these trainings to hold on to that myth, for all these mediums internationally to hold on to such a myth. It keeps the hierarchy with them again. They're special. That medium is the only one who can communicate with your loved one for the first year to year and a half when you are in the deepest state of grieving. Hogwash. You should be communicating with them, if at all possible, before they die. Because what happens during the death process, and hospice nurses would be able to confirm this, what happens during the death process is that they do something I've labeled it as playing both sides of the fence. Okay, that title means that the person in the process of dying is spending a great deal of their time on the other side. They're spending the remainder of their time here on the earth plane still. Even if they're in a coma, even if they're not communicating, they're still doing this. So sometimes they would be in the body, but the majority of the time they're not. They're over on the other side. Other people who play both sides of the fence are those who've had a near-death experience, are very awakened or enlightened. When I'm doing mediumship, that's what I'm doing. Those that have dementia, Alzheimer's, those that are in a coma, and if they have severe intellectual disorders. So when you're on the other side and then you come back here, what you'll often notice is a level of frustration about being back here. So for those of you that are dealing with maybe like elderly parents or, people suffering with dementia, Alzheimer's and things, you might notice that level of frustration. Now, I've worked with some hospice workers, and one of the beautiful things about the process of passing that they like to promote is an ability for the family, friends to come together and give love to the person who's dying by releasing them. I had an aunt who was passing away from cancer, and they had a booklet, a pamphlet on this, and they handed it to everyone in the family who was there for her passing. And in this pamphlet from hospice, it said things like, let the person know that it's okay for them to go, release them. So let's start talking about that. That's incredibly accurate, because a lot of people are not communicating the best that they could be in spirit. When they're in the process of dying, because they're holding on and they're trying not to die, you can have the morphine up all the way and they're still not passing away. And sometimes what can happen is that they are afraid to go because they worry about you. They may not be sure, especially if they're a mom, they're the matriarch of the family. They've been taking care of everybody for 50, 60 years. That's hard to do. It's hard to just say, well, time to go. I'm not going to worry about, my 4 kids and my 15 grandchildren. It's okay. Or my husband. That's hard to do. So we have to make it okay for them to go. So the first thing that you're going to want to do, if you're dealing with someone who's in the process of passing, is to be the bold family member, to be the one who will step up and give them that love that they deserve, in letting them know, I'm going to be okay. The rest of the family is going to be okay. We don't need you to stay here to take care of us anymore. And you can say something like, it is your time now. It is time for you to do what's right for you. We want you to take care of you now. Now, often when they're in the process of passing away, they start to send you signs and symbols. A great example is when my grandmother was passing away, and she loved butterflies. Well, we live in New York, and it was the middle of winter, so we're talking outside looked like tundra, and we're in, I think it was like December, maybe going into January. I mean, there were no butterflies. No butterflies. Well, leave it to my grandmother. So we went to the infirmary, and she was up on the 3rd floor because she tried to escape. So she actually had an ankle bracelet on, and they had to monitor her because she would try to escape to the woods. So grandma was in the process of passing, and We had to go way up to the top level to see her. And I would get there as her death was approaching, within the last couple visits of her dying. And there would be a butterfly. There was a butterfly waiting in the elevator when we got there. I mean, I was absolutely amazed. And I knew it was coming from her, but what I didn't expect was that this butterfly would follow us from the elevator all the way up to the 3rd floor, all the way down the hallway to her furthest room, so she couldn't escape the hospital. And it would go into her room and hang out on the blinds. And when we would leave and the visit would be done, we were shocked. This is every time while she was in the passing process. Multiple visits. This butterfly, when we were done visiting, would escort us back to the elevator and all the way down to the bottom floor and say goodbye to us. This is how Grandma, and this is how I knew we were close in time, because she was already communicating, no longer from her body, but now from the other side. Things like this are pretty common, but we're often overlooking them. A lot of people will get a phone call, maybe a message will be left, or maybe it'll just be a phantom, kind of phone call. You guys feel free to post your questions and comments. Paul will be taking care of them. I forgot to say that. Many people will start to see number patterns, or they'll use channeling through those around you or the animals around you to communicate and send you messages. Okay. So very, very common to see patterns like this. What we want to do is embrace these opportunities. We want to say, that seems odd. That seems like I could almost confuse it for being something that my passing grandmother would do, but that's impossible and that doesn't make any sense. And so I'm going to discard it. No, you don't do that. Don't disrespect like that. You say, I know that this is you. I see that we have a new way of communicating. I'm so excited that it's starting this soon before you're even gone to the other side. I look forward to more of this communication. And what I would highly recommend, if you're seeing this unfold, is to add on another layer to it. I would say, could you show me something else? Could you maybe use my phone and manipulate my phone to communicate with me? Or could you maybe put a song on the radio so I'll understand that it's you? Could you show me some numbers? Or have me look at the clock at a certain time so that I know that it's you? Could you visit me in a dream tonight or in the next few days and spend some time with me there so that we can continue to talk, since we can't do that right now? There are a million things that you could do to build communication with a living person or with a deceased person or with someone in the process of dying that looks exactly like what you have been doing your entire life with any other human being. Communication is a two-way street, and if you reject and you block and you cut off, they will pull back. If you feed the communication, you'll get more of that communication. So it's not like they've changed. You're just learning a new language with them. And this is something to be celebrated. I do death coaching parties. If someone's passing away or someone's just passed, or there's maybe someone who was deceased a long time, I do parties for people. And we use each individual at the party to learn how to best communicate with that deceased loved one. Now, most readers out there who find that they channeled someone who was still technically living, they panic. Maybe this has happened to you in the past when you got a reading and all of a sudden the reader said, that recording never took. There's no DVD, there's no CD, there's no tape recording. It got lost in the mail. There's a shame element that comes with this, with your old time readers, that should not be there. This is a perfectly natural part of the process. So for all of you, maybe old school psychic mediums out there who didn't understand what happened to you, it was supposed to build the communication between your sitter and the person who's in the process of passing. They were trying to resolve some unfinished business or to build that new language. And you may have missed the mark by getting fearful and thinking that you were getting accused of them being in the passing process, or not understanding why it didn't take a year to a year and a half, because that's a myth. So we want to be open to this at all times. It's happening naturally. Now, one of the examples that I like to give is my aunt, when she was passing, she was going through her third bout of cancer. And I remember her calling me. I was at Starbucks finishing up one of my journalism papers. And I remember her calling me and being like, Ivy, it's back and I'm not fighting it this time. I'm going to go. I don't even know if I can talk about this. I'm like losing my shit. So we supported her in that. It was a very short period of time. I thought we were going to have about 2 years. It was probably about 8 months after that. I got a call from North Carolina that hospice was there. And she was passing. I went to get on a plane. I got bumped from the plane. I went to get in my car. I got a flat tire. I got a rental car. I had problems with that. Every obstacle in the free world was preventing me from getting there. Now I know why. Because I can teach this to others. But I was so stressed out that I could not get there and I was going to miss it. And what my aunt did, once I finally had the tires and I was finally driving in the car, it's 12 hours approximately. I'm sure I made it more like 9. But it's about 12 hours between where I am in New York and where she is in North Carolina in the United States. During that trip, she 3 separate times turned off my radio, pushed the CD out, and put on Elvis music, which was her music. She went to Memphis. She had pictures of Elvis everywhere. She made a birthday cake for Elvis every year, you know? Or would do something similar to that. 3 times I pulled over on the side of the road and I frantically called my family and I said, oh my God, I missed it. Is everybody okay? How are things going? And they would say, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. And I thought, that's odd. She's literally communicating with me, but she's still alive. So I was confused, but I knew what I knew. I knew it was her spirit. So I finally make it there, and she was alive for, I want to say, it was approximately 4 days. And she came to me on that last day. Everyone had gone back to work. They were 20 minutes from the house in all different directions. Durham, Apex, Raleigh. Everybody was 20 minutes away. And she came to me in spirit and said, it's time, I'm ready to go. She said, get everybody home. So we called everybody. On this whim that I was accurate, we called everybody and they came. We had 10 minutes around her bedside. She waited for everybody to get there to say goodbye to her. During that 10 minutes, I made agreements with her. And I said, this is what I need to know that you're okay and that you're around and that you're here with me. I said, I need a full beam rainbow up in the sky when I'm in dire straits. I said, and for every other occasion that's going on, send me a half beam rainbow. She passed away. And I went outside with the dog to cry. And on a sunny, beautiful day in North Carolina that it was, there was a full beam rainbow in the sky immediately afterward. Now, I have never had an event go on with my children from baseball games to graduations to birthdays where there hasn't been a beam of a rainbow, half beam of a rainbow, prisms coming through the window, whatever it is. She uses this all the time to communicate. That was our first symbol. She also uses music. So do you see how she showed me what she was going to be able to use? Music and songs, song lyrics that play in my head, she puts in my brain. Manipulation of technology, that's a big thing for her. So if they manipulate through music and songs, they can also do lights, they can do the phone, they can do your computer. Then she uses the symbology that we asked for, that we set up. And since then, we've set up a ton of other ways of communication. So what I want you to do with your loved ones that are deceased, or if they're in the process of it, is to come up with agreements. You say, can you give me this? Can you show me this? But with these agreements, you want to keep it simple. The biggest mistake that people make is to demand a certain amount of communication out of their dying or deceased loved ones. I get a lot of men who are like, I want to hear from my dad, but I don't want to hear anything you just told me he said. I want the password to his Facebook account. I want him to tell me what were the last words he said to me before he died, or what was the nickname he had for me when I was 5. I'm not a magician, first of all, nor do I care to be greedy with spirit and cut off my connection to them by behaving like that. I am here as a receiver. And you as a medium, as everybody is, needs to be here as a receiver. Not commanding, not demanding, not greedy, not disrespectful. If you treated another human being that way, to their face in communication, demanding of them, they'd walk away. That'd be the end of the relationship. This is no different. Dead or alive, we're all human. So we want to have an attitude of gratitude. So you're going to want to start with simple things. First off, like I said, allow them to show you what they're good at. If you've ever watched the movie Ghost, you would see him learning. Patrick Swayze, this was super cute. I think it came out in the 80s, where he was trying to push the can and the other spirit on the subway was showing him how to push the can. That takes a lot of energy. Don't demand things like that straight out of the gate. Unless they died young or they died suddenly. Those spirits will be able to pull stuff like that off straight out of the gate. Sometimes you'll see that the good energy manipulators are also those that were dying for a long time, and they played both sides of the fence for a long time. They might be good at it too, but that's a pretty tall order. So you want to pick simple things like we talked about, and you want to focus also on the clairs. The clairs. Clairsentience, claircognizance, clairaudience, clairempathy. What did I not mention? What's the most common one?
You said clairaudience.
No.
Clairaugustine is one.
Clairaugustine. No, the psychic.
Yeah. Clairvoyance.
Clairvoyance, thank you. Okay, the most common one, clairvoyance. So when we look at the clairs, and I break all of this down in the psychic mediumship training, I can't get into it all today, but we have different clairs. Different clairs means that you have different abilities, sort of like a intuitive intelligence, a sixth sense. And if you understand the clairs that you have, you can better understand how to communicate with your dying or deceased loved ones. You may even be able to, this is what I do when I do death coaching readings and when I train my students and when I do the parties. I figure out what clairs the deceased have, I figure out what clairs you have, and we connect. When we have a match in clairs, we have easy communication. So that's another part of the process, a little bit more in depth. I also do something in my psychic mediumship training with death coaching where we can train the deceased to better communicate. Okay, I want to explain another situation where I had a client who was in the process of passing away. I had never read her, but I read her daughter regularly. I was sleeping on the couch. I had a woman come to me in spirit. She woke me up and she said, I have an emergency. I need you to help. She said, my daughter is going to call you. I have cancer. They told us I would have 3 weeks to live. But that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in 3 days instead. My daughter's going to call you upset. I need you to console her and tell her everything I'm going to tell you. She said, get your coffee and get ready for the phone call. I roll off the couch. I didn't even get to the coffee pot and the phone is ringing. And it's her daughter, a client of mine, upset. She said, They told us she would have 3 weeks. Hospice and everybody's in here. And I'm not sure it's going to take that long because she's talking to people in the room that aren't there. What is going on? She said, I don't know if it's the morphine or the other drugs they have her on, or if she's actually talking to dead people in the room that we can't see. So I meet with the client and I tell her everything the mother wants her to know about the process and how it's going to go. Exactly 3 days later, she passed away. And one of the things that this dying mother wanted her daughter to understand was that she was playing both sides of the fence and that she was safe and that she was enjoying the company of her own deceased loved ones that were coming there to visit, that were really coming there to help her cross. When we cross, we always have company. We don't do this alone. So she wanted to start building up the communication with her daughter straight away before she even passed. And we were able to do that. And it was amazing. But before that could really happen, her daughter needed to be at peace with her passing and to let go and to tell her that it's okay to go. So you never want to be the block in communication between you and a dying or deceased loved one. Be open to the process. And the more you are open, the more you will get. I think that's pretty much all I'm going to say about it today. I could go on and on and on and on and on, but okay. We'll just sort of leave it at that for today. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Yeah, a lot of comments.
Okay.
When you're talking about your aunt, you did get some hug and heart emojis and XOs from Soraya and Joanna.
Thank you.
Supporting you. But a lot of people, yeah, so this is ringing, it's very familiar for a lot of people. Soraya said that when her grandfather was in his final hours, he was saying he was being asked questions and he didn't know the answers and he was having trouble getting over. And he kept repeating 401. And she's like, I'd like to know what 401 might have meant.
401. Well, I would wonder if that was a time. Okay, a time that he was referring to, specific literal time on the clock. It may have made more sense to him at the time that that's sort of when he was being shown that he should go or release. So I would look back into that. But if we look at those numbers and what they actually mean, 4 is change. 4 is transition from an old way into a new way. 4 is also the support of our guides and angels. 0 would have been dividing the two, but 1 is brand new beginnings, a brand new life, a brand new opportunity, highest prosperity, but not without hard work. So he may have been talking in numbers, which is sort of its own language.
Wow.
Processing. To him, it made sense.
Ja's mama says, my Aunt Ivy just passed away from COVID. She lived in Brooklyn, New York. I was saying I needed to talk to someone because she left too fast. Then you popped up within 24 hours on Facebook. You were my sign.
Oh, beautiful. And her name is Ivy.
Yep.
Well, I'm so sorry for your loss. I have been posting, I should post it more, but I have been posting that we're taking emergency COVID readings. Paul will get you scheduled within 24 hours even. And, we're helping with everything from funeral arrangements to last wishes because there was no communication there. And the only reason I'm able to do that is because I know how to do death coaching. And this is something that once you learn how to do, you'll be able to be involved not only with the process for their wishes and things like this, but to keep that communication open so that it's never a big gap and you feel that divide between you and them, like they're a million miles away. This is the nicest way to make sure that we stay in touch, because while she's there, if you don't know the language, it can feel like she's changed a lot or that she's somewhat unattainable. And that just is not at all the case. So very glad that crossed your path.
Pinta Cook said that when her mom was passing, she told her it's okay to go and that she'll be okay. So she was starting the communication then. And Joanna Rybicki said that When her mom passed away, her sister, and her aunt all received many feathers for days before, during, and after her passing. And none of us knew about the others' feathers until the funeral.
I love it.
And she still has them.
And
she's awesome.
Oh, that's what I was just going to say, because sometimes when they start using objects to communicate with you, we call them pennies from heaven. So they could be pennies, they could be nickels or dimes or anything. A lot of people will use, a lot of spirits will use rocks or crystals and stones or seashells. Feathers are super common as well, or certain flowers. But what they like to encourage you to do is to collect them. So you can even keep up sort of wherever you have pictures or a memorial for them. You know, you can keep them in jars in these little collections, and they love it. It's like an altar, you know, and it makes the communication so much easier because objects do hold energy. I talk about this at the empathic awareness training a lot. Objects hold energy. So if you tap an object, you play with an object, you talk to a picture of them, you hold their ashes, whatever it is, anything really, especially though if you know that they had contact with it, you tap into their energy. It's called psychometry. And so you're able to just hear their thoughts and, you know, be in their energy and in their company. And it's sort of like picking up a telephone. Even if you're getting an answering machine, you leave a message and they're going to answer that. So it's an ongoing dialogue, and the objects are really useful in that. So that's what she's trying to, you know, show you through that, but also obviously to give you reassurance that she's there.
Roxanne Tice said that just today, her dad was sitting by a window, and a bird came along and held onto the screen beside him and kept pecking at the window. And it made her wonder who that was.
There you go. They like to use woodpeckers. They like to use cardinals. But they tend to use birds that will stand out more for, depending on your region, where you live. And they will even do naughty things, you know, with the winged animals. We'll even see them flying into the window and kind of passing out and, you know, things like this. But they absolutely, the ones that are able to manipulate the animals more are probably the same ones that can manipulate technology. So was it Roxanne? Yep. Roxanne, if your dad is able to manipulate a bird, he's probably able to eventually anyways, manipulate like maybe deer, or, you know, sometimes they'll move from like a bird to a squirrel or a bird to a chipmunk. Or a raccoon. And then we kind of go up from there into like deer or bigger birds, bigger animals and things like this. But those spirits that are able to do that, if they're toying with that kind of energy manipulation, I can guarantee that they're able to do the phone, the music, the flickering lights, stuff like this too. So ask for that.
Speaking of asking, Heather P. has a question. She says, if someone has already passed and you want to ask for a sign, how do you know what to ask for? I know you said ask for small things, but like what small things? Well,
like we talked about symbols. So you can ask them to show you symbols. You can ask them to show you something in the weather, like, you know, a rainbow or the wind. You could ask them to show you numbers. You can start working with your clairs and understand what clairs you have, and then ask them to use the clairs that you have, all kinds of things, really, really anything simple. I think that if you know them, you kind of know their personality and you know what they were like. And so you know whether or not they were a good communicator or a bad communicator. You know what types of interests or hobbies they had, things that they would identify with. Choose those things. Someone who was a poor communicator when they were here on Earth, they may not be great at it on the other side. So there are different levels of difficulty with this.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We have a comment here from Sammy Sola.
Okay.
She says that while my father was on his deathbed in the hospital, he was in a coma. I spoke with him knowing he could hear me. As upset as I was losing him, I felt gave him permission and comfortability to go. Yeah. I feel he waited for me to speak to go. The timing lifted weight and made that experience easier for me. I hope I did help him.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with parents, you know, can you let the cat out? She's going bonkers. Especially with parents, they, you know, can't. And you can understand how with grandparents, it gets even harder. You know, then we're talking many generations that they were caring for. And especially if we have someone who has that matriarchal position or that patriarchal position, it's going to be harder for them. It would also be hard for anyone who has unfinished business. If it came on suddenly, if they didn't get to say everything, if arrangements weren't properly made, or if there's something between the two of you that still needs to be said, it's really important that you let them know it's okay. You know, this isn't the end all be all. We could deal with this later. We can continue to deal with this and communicate. It's okay. Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, if you guys are interested in booking a death coaching party or you need a death coaching reading, all of that information is up on the website. Paul's going to post that above, and hope to see some of you guys for psychic mediumship development, where I train you more in depth in all of this, and also how to train the deceased. Psychic mediumship development course begins fall semester October 7th. Registration is now open. Seating is limited, and I hope to see you guys for more mini classes, quarantine series. The next one is going to be how to hate people less and forgive more on Sunday the 24th at 8 p.m. See you guys soon. Thanks so much. Thank you, Paul.
You're very welcome.